and share this with your moms, with your nieces, with your sisters, with your grandparents, with your coworkers. Share this and get this out to every mom that you know, because we sincerely desire for it to be a blessing, and just to provide this platform where folks can engage in conversation with one another, with their adult children, or even with their children that are still minors. All righty. We look forward to seeing you in a few.
It's as if I were to create an analogy, it's as if you're on a ship fishing, and you're throwing the net as far as you can to catch the fish that you can, but I see that you're not catching as many, and I realize, oh well, I have this extra tool, or I have additional strength, or I have whatever it might be, and I can cast that net further than you did, or I can cast a net on the opposite side of the. I'm not going to keep casting it where you're casting it. I'm not going to just stand next to you the entire time and just say, well, we'll just keep generating the same thing that we've been generating this entire time. At least that's my psychology. It's, well, let me see where else, what isn't tapped, what isn't experienced, right? I'm in college. I'm looking at, well, I don't really have too many people to go and talk to about their experience of college. You had to drop out, or you dropped out of college in order to care for me, is the narrative in my mind about that. So, yes, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be getting my education, and I want to make my mom proud. I want to make her proud. I want to get good grades. I want to make sure I'm studying hard. I'm not out here partying. I'm not out here wasting my opportunity, right? I'm very focused. So the focus even is maybe partially personality, but there's also a part of that is my love for you. Like, I don't want to squander the opportunity. Like, look at what all my mom had to
Mm.
sacrifice to get here. Why would I squander that? Why wouldn't I try to optimize and maximize the opportunity in front of me? And that's what my focus was, and still is to this day. But definitely at that point in time, that's where my focus was. Um, so to the point, to the other side, the other part that I wanted to mention is some of even that empty nest that you began feeling at that time. Because I recall it, and I remember us talking about it a little bit. I think even led to the self-care and self-love that you then started to realize that you hadn't really been giving yourself, because so much is poured into us that now, if you think about it from a perspective of like, well, now Stephen doesn't need me as much as he once did, and he's creating this new thing over there. Now there's this, like, it's literally what emptiness means. Like, now there's this empty space that he used to take up that's no longer being taken up by him, right? And what can fill that? Now I can have the opportunity to be more reflective about, well, what do I want to do at that time? And I think we had those conversations. Well, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? Like, what can, and of course I'm the eldest, so you still had other children to care for and to do all that with. But I think it was the starting point of some of that, so that it would be a little bit easier when, Roman then graduates from high school, and then Marcus then graduates from high school, right? And then goes into college, that you start to see how it doesn't have to be a negative. It can be a positive for you as well. Although, I've noticed that it's not the easiest path forward. Um, the other thing that I wanted to say about it before I take your feelings on this is the separation, the separation that I felt from you, again, always in order to care for me, is the narrative in my mind about that. So, yes, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be getting my education, and I want to make my mom proud. I want to make her proud. I want to get good grades. I want to make sure I'm studying hard. I'm not out here partying. I'm not out here wasting my opportunity, right? I'm very focused. So the focus even is maybe partially personality, but there's also a part of that is my love for you. Like, I don't want to squander the opportunity. Like, look at what all my mom had to
Mm.
sacrifice to get here. Why would I squander that? Why wouldn't I try to optimize and maximize the opportunity in front of me? And that's what my focus was, and still is to this day. But definitely at that point in time, that's where my focus was. Um, So to the point, to the other side, the other part that I wanted to mention is some of even that empty nest that you began feeling at that time. Because I recall it, and I remember us talking about it a little bit. I think even led to the self-care and self-love that you then started to realize that you hadn't really been giving yourself, because so much is poured into us that now, if you think about it from a perspective of like, well, now Stephen doesn't need me as much as he once did, and he's creating this new thing over there. Now there's this, like, it's literally what emptiness means. Like now there's this empty space that he used to take up that's no longer being taken up by him, right? And what can fill that? Now I can have the opportunity to be more reflective about, well, what is it that, well, what do I want to do at that time? And I think we had those conversations. Well, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? Like, what can, and of course I'm the eldest, so you still had other children to care for and to do all of that with. But I think it was the starting point of some of that, so that it would be a little bit easier when, Roman then graduates from high school, and then Marcus then graduates from high school, right? And then goes into college, that you start to see how it doesn't have to be a negative. It can be a positive for you as well. Although, I've noticed that it's not the easiest path forward. The other thing that I wanted to say about it before I take your feelings on this is the separation that I felt from you, again, always felt like I felt like you expected that from me. And maybe I was wrong in that. And that's something that maybe I've never said to you. It felt, again, like a passing of the baton, right? You pass a baton and that next sprinter takes off away from you. You slow down, that sprinter takes off. But it's for everybody on that team to win, right? It's not for just that person who's running that leg of the race. The gold medal goes to the entire team, right? There's an appreciation for each leg of that race, right? So I don't know, maybe there is something that I missed there, but I wanted to say that to you so that you can kind of get a sense of, there wasn't any sense of like, some kids have this, I just want to get away from my mom or my dad. I just want to be away. And I definitely felt that when I graduated from high school, and that's why I didn't apply to any schools in California. And it's like, I need to just have this new experience, but that didn't last all that long, and decided to stay local and go to UCLA. And really it was like, how can I help, to a point you made earlier, how can I help solve this situation? Right. So
Yeah.
what can I do that then brings in something that is supportive of my family?
Right, right. Well, it's really interesting because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about other moms and how this is playing out in multiple households around the globe, actually. And specifically for you and I, because you and I had such a close relationship, we would sit and talk, and I would I was your mom, but it was also like your pastor, I was your mentor, I was your teacher. Our relational dynamics just far transcended just mother son, especially with you. And so that transition and that void that was created may possibly, and you can only you can speak to this, you possibly viewed it as that's mother-son relationship. But what it actually was, from my vantage point and my experience, yeah, it was mother-son, but then there was a friendship there too. And there were like other nuances, even though it wasn't like a peer-to-peer friendship, but there were conversations, and there were so many similarities in the way that we viewed certain things. It would trigger these amazing conversations. And I wouldn't say suddenly they were gone, but during that process, that created multiple voids, if I can put it that way. It wasn't just mother, son, the son is gone off to college, void. It was like that level of conversation. You and I, even as is
being demonstrated through us having this conversation now. We have always done this. And I gravitate to those higher levels of conversation, those, cognitive engagements. And as you left, I looked around and the other kids were there. Our relationships were a little different. And certainly we communicated because I communicate with all the kids, but it wasn't you. Those voids I impacted me on in multiple different ways. So when I think of even moms that are listening to this during Mother's Day, I'm thinking of I'm revisiting how I felt, the grief, the pain, the loneliness from time to time, and how I can bring to this conversation, even for them, just to embrace the process and make the phone call. I believe that what you just said is so vital. By sharing your perspective, I would say to the moms watching, if you are in this, or if you're experiencing this right now, or you have the perspective that Stephen has shared, should provide some comfort that your child has not forgotten about you. Your child still loves you. They're adulting. They're wanting to possibly prove themselves or honor you by being independent, honor you by so that we know that there are so many different dynamics from relationship to relationship, from household to household. There are different dynamics, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that there are as we're celebrating and honoring moms and having this conversation surrounding Mother's Day, that this conversation is providing some tools, some perspective, some encouragement, and even maybe some healing, some healing.
Hopefully.
Because if we can get caught up in our feelings, well, he's not talking to me, I'm not gonna call him. All of that, which is, but we're humans,
Right.
right? So we react the way we react. And a lot of that and this is just what I feel is coming and being communicated through this conversation, a lot of that's not even accurate. It's
Right.
not accurate. It may be that adult's child's way of saying, well, this is one less person that you have to be concerned about right now. And let me get out here on the other side of the boat or in a different boat and just help this overall process. So thank you for communicating that way. I believe that not only for me was it helpful, because it was, but also for other moms that are listening.
Yeah, I think that, hopefully it is helpful. And I think that just in the kind of, if we call it the arc of a loving relationship, especially between parents and children, there is a point of release, right? There's a point where you will have to release, and release doesn't mean forget about and leave alone and never talk to and, act as if there was no real relationship there. But there is a sense of releasing that person into their vision of what their life, is. They're creating their own vision, their own plan for their own motion in the direction that they want to go in. And you realize as a parent that you can't control that, right? And your feelings may not matter as much as they used to matter. And that's actually, I think that's actually, it's a positive thing. It's a benefit. It's because that human being has to figure it out for themselves, right?
And it's not easy, even though it's positive and it's real. It's not easy to
Well, I
live
remember having a
through.
conversation with you, and I remember going through this experience because we were so close. And to your point, like, it wasn't just mom, son. I don't even know what that means, right? So again, my anchor is in my relationship with you. So to hear you articulate, well, we were friends and we could have these conversations, and those are kind of, you're like separating it away from mom, son. To me, that is just mom, son, right?
Right.
I don't have another narrative to really like compare it to, but I'm
Right.
happy that you said that because then it lets me like to think about it in a different way. And I remember being in college and having this sense that I needed to be able to hear from God for myself. I needed to be able to make decisions based upon what I felt to do internally. And I had, up until that point, like offshored some of that. I needed to be able to hear from God for myself. I needed to be able to make decisions based upon what I felt to do internally. And I had, up until that point, like offshored some of that to you, right? And at minimum, it doesn't mean like I would ask you, to give me direction on everything that I did in my life. Absolutely not. But there was a sense of like confirmation that you would give to me, right? There was a sense of affirmation that you would give to me. And I fell in love with that, right? To know that, Mom, hey, I'm thinking to do this. And you say, yes, son, go ahead and do that. I sense that as well. Or I believe God is telling me for you to do that same thing. There's a sense of like, okay, my mom said it too. Okay. Like now I can launch out and do it. I'm not just leaning on trusting myself or just trusting my spiritual relationship with God. It's like you become a very big figure, an important voice in the decision-making matrix, right? So I remember feeling this sense of like, all of a sudden, I'm having these ideas around things to do. My mom's not agreeing with it. Right? She's not on board with these things that I feel very strongly and I hear very clearly are for me to do. And my mom's like, I don't know about that. Right? Whether you vocalized it or I could just tell again energetically from you that it's like not really on board with it. And that impacted me because I wanted you to be on board. I wanted so deeply. I wanted so deeply for you to say, good job. And like to have those affirmations, right? To good job, son. And yes, that's the way you should think about it. And that's the way you should go about it. But I wasn't getting that. I wasn't getting that feedback from you. And I struggled, right? So there would be decisions I would go back on and say, well, maybe I need to stop this relationship. Maybe I need to stop this decision path for my career. Maybe I need to, rethink these things that I'm thinking through. But I'd come back through the process of prayer and reflection and meditation that you taught us, and I come right back to the same conclusion. I come right back to the same things like, oh, okay, something's happening here, and I think it's on purpose. I have to come to a point in my own life as a man, I think as a woman, right? It doesn't matter. Any adult has to come. I think it is the change from childhood to adulthood, where I am not desirous of wise counsel. So we've had that conversation as well. It's like, Mom, I may not do what you tell me to do, but I always want to hear from you.
Right,
I
right.
don't care that you disagree. If you disagree, tell me, because that just lets me go back and like add that into thinking through it. Now, if I
Right.
come back around to my same conclusion, I still have to be man enough to say, okay, well, this is the conclusion, and put the chips where they are. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm gonna be wrong sometime, right? To your point about kind of doing what was expected, that was part of my own growth and development, because I
Right.
could not live the rest of my life only doing what was expected. So how do you break free of that? You start doing what's not expected, right? There's no other way around it but that, right? So you find yourself as part of just a natural development. If I'm afraid of making mistakes, that's a problem, because we're all going to make mistakes, right? If I'm hesitant to make decisions because now my mom is not in agreement with it, but it's a decision that I truly feel in my heart I want to do, and I've gone through the reasons I want to do it, and I've like filtered through, is there anything weird here about like what and why I want to do this? And I'm like praying through that and thinking through that and fasting through that at times and all these things. And I come right back to, no, this is for me, whether right or whether it's going to have a good outcome, bad outcome, like all these things, good and bad, in my opinion, don't mean as much to me now at my age, because I understand it's just part of a process. I shouldn't actually judge anything as good or bad. There have been plenty of things that I considered to be good that ended up then being good for just a while and then no longer being good for me personally. And it was a situation where I needed to exit, right? But it was for the time that it lasted, or the time that I was there, it was good. And I was meant to be there for a season, right? So understanding that I have to be able to pivot when it's time to pivot, and not only when I then get confirmation from you, especially, right? Or any other person, right? We can, as entrepreneurs, as passion, as purpose-driven people, we understand that we can't have any. There can be no other God in our hearts, right? There can be no other voice that is so loud to us that it could lead us down a path that we don't feel we should be going down.
Right.
So anyway, I'm saying all that to say that was also a part of that process, and I recognized that I was aware of it happening, and then I had to make a decision. Okay, well, this is going to impact our relationship, but to the point that I was making about about there being a stage of release within love, is the beauty of the coming back together, right? The beauty of building something that's new, right? Our relationship today doesn't look the same way it did when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, but it
Right.
still has value, and it still has like all these things, and there's still plenty of room to grow with it as well. There's
Right.
plenty that we can be intentional about creating and making between the two of us. So any thoughts regarding, from your perspective, regarding getting to a point with your own children where you would say, I just had to release, I had to, my love in that moment was to release, not to hold on, not to do all the things that I've been doing, not to hold tight, not to, make sure they didn't go X and Y direction, which we've all, me and my siblings have experienced that level of love from you, where it's like, no, you're not going to do that, right? I'm going to stand in the way of you doing that. And then I've also experienced where it's like, okay, you're grown. I don't want you to, and I wish you were listening to me, and I'm going to vocalize my feelings and share with you how I feel, but I have to release you to doing what you feel is right.
Well, it's a delicate balance that has to be struck, right? So being totally vulnerable and honest in a relationship, engaged with the person, you want to speak truth, your truth, what's on your heart, what's on your mind, whether you agree or whether you don't agree, because those are the makings for a real relationship, a solid relationship, right? Navigating and separating the parent-child relationship when the child is a minor from the parent-child relationship when the child is an adult. That's where I believe a lot of moms or parents find, there's a struggle there. So on one end of the spectrum is oh, you're grown, do whatever you want to do. And I definitely didn't take that approach. Or it's the other end, which is extremely, I would say equally as unhealthy, because you don't want to just throw your kids to the wolves. Your voice still does have value, although the dynamics of the relationship are changing. So you don't want to just say, okay, you're 18 now, or you're 21 now, you're out of my house, you do what you want. That's not healthy. That is not healthy, because we are still in relationship. But then the other end of the spectrum is being that hovering parent who just continually violates boundaries, continually is just, no, you're going to do what I say, I don't care. And they're all feet and hands in and far, far beyond what they ought to be when they're dealing with an adult child. So it's finding that balance, that healthy spot where you still offer your voice. And aside from how you may or may not feel about it, if they accept that advice or not, releasing it and letting and trusting the process. Trusting the process. So I recall, as you and I were going through this process, me being reminded of certain things that I taught you when you were younger. I had to turn around and feed it to myself. Crissina, just trust. God's got him. God's got him. He'll. And then you also helped me. And my middle son, your younger brother, helped me too, because he would always say, maybe there's certain things God just wants me to go through.
Absolutely.
You
That's
can't,
hard.
you can't
That's hard.
rescue me
Right.
from everything. You
What
can't
parent,
navigate.
what parent wants to hear that?
Right.
Right. What parent wants to hear that? Yeah.
But it was so true. I had to take my own medicine.
Yeah.
Because whether the truth is coming from
Mhm.
my mind, my heart, my soul, my spirit, scripture, or wherever else, or the truth is coming from that child that I gave birth to, the truth is the truth. And it is true that there are certain, there's a part of these processes that you're speaking of that are specifically designed for your growth, your maturity, that have nothing to do with foundation. My job may have been to put up the framework, but not to paint each room. You know, not to maybe even put the roof on it. You may want to go up another story. You may want to. So knowing my place
Mhm.
as a parent, as a mom, and some mothers really have this bad.
Mhm.
We as women
Okay.
can become controlling
Mhm.
and want to just govern everything in our children's lives into their 20s, into their 30s, their 40s, they're forever this we've seen it, the imagery, you know, whether it's on television or in movies or whatever, that overbearing mom. And you and I talked just a few minutes ago regarding my relationship with my mom. And my mom was very overbearing and very opinionated, very. And I knew that that was something that I did not want to be with you all as you got older. So as we experienced the transformation of our relationship, and my feelings would get hurt, or I would feel rejected, not needed, cast aside. These are all, this is how it's hitting.
Yeah.
I was very intentional in knowing when to stop
Mhm.
and when to be quiet and when to let it go. Express how I felt about it, what my perspective was, have that conversation, have that interaction. But I understood that truly, ultimately, at the end of the day, I wasn't running this. This isn't me, it's God. God's got you. And that you were in a season of your life, you were entering into a season of your life where it had to be you and God. So even if you felt strongly to do something that here I am, maybe from a 35,000 foot altitude, saying, no, don't do that. Don't you know, at the end of the day, God is at that 35,000 foot altitude. God is right there on the ground with you. God is in you. And Crissina, excuse me very much, but I've got this. I'll share something with you that another example. I remember you had left the house. Marcus was still in high school. Roman was in college, I believe, or had just left college or something. So Roman was an adult as well.
Okay, you are moving right on through. Segment 3 was fire. Share this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you let us know that you want to hear more, you want us to go deeper, if you have some specific questions for us, some specific conversations that you would like to have, let us know in the comments below. And also join us for our live session. It will be a virtual session, so that no matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to tune in. However, my son Stephen and I will be there live to meet you and greet you and we want to hear your comments. We want to hear your thought processes and answer your questions. So you have completed the third part or segment of this conversation. We only have 2 more segments to go, and they are very, very, very powerful. No matter where you are around the world, we trust that you are having a phenomenal Mother's Day. God bless you, and we look forward to talking to you really soon. Bye-bye.